Picture this for a second. You're sitting at your kitchen table late at night, scrolling through home listings. You find one that looks perfect. Clean kitchen, nice light, a quiet street. You imagine your furniture in there, your mornings, your weekends, and then you see the price. You close the app. But it doesn't leave your mind. Because somewhere in the back of your head, there's this voice that keeps repeating the same thing over and over. Renting is just throwing money away. So now every month when you pay rent, it doesn't feel neutral anymore. It feels like you're falling behind, like you're doing something wrong. But what if I told you the math behind renting versus buying isn't as obvious as it seems? And in some cases, renting doesn't just make sense, it quietly wins. Most people don't actually compare renting and buying. They compare renting to an idea that owning a home automatically means you're building wealth, gaining stability, and doing what responsible adults are supposed to do. And on the surface, it feels true. You make a mortgage payment instead of rent, and instead of paying a landlord, you're paying yourself. That sounds logical. But that belief skips over something important. It treats buying a home like a purely financial decision when it's actually a mix of psychology, lifestyle, and long-term math. And once you separate those pieces, things start to look different. Because the real question isn't, is renting throwing money away? The real question is, what are you actually getting in return for the money you spend? Let's slow this down and walk through it the way most people experience it. When you rent, your payment feels simple. You pay, you live there, and that's it. No ownership, no asset, no long-term gain. And because there's nothing tangible at the end, it feels like the money disappears. But when you buy a home, the payment feels different. Part of it goes toward your loan, which builds equity over time. And that creates the feeling that you're progressing, even if the numbers behind the scenes are more complicated. Because here's what doesn't get talked about enough. In the early years of a mortgage, most of your payment doesn't build equity. It goes toward interest. So even though your monthly payment might be $2,500, only a small portion is actually increasing your ownership in the home. The rest? It's just the cost of borrowing money. And then there are the other costs that don't show up in the rent versus buy conversation. Property taxes, maintenance, repairs, insurance, unexpected issues that don't wait until you're ready. The kind of things that don't feel like investments when they happen. They just feel like expenses. A leaking roof doesn't build wealth. A broken furnace doesn't increase your net worth. But they are part of the real cost of owning. Now compare that to renting. When something breaks, it's not your financial responsibility. When the market shifts, you're not tied to a single asset. And maybe most importantly, your money stays flexible. And that's where the hidden math starts to show up. Because the real comparison isn't just between rent and a mortgage payment. It's between what you do with the difference. If renting costs you $2,000 a month and buying would cost you $3,000 when you include everything, that $1,000 gap isn't just a number, it's potential. If that money is saved, invested, or even just kept as a buffer, it compounds in a different way. Not through property value, but through liquidity and opportunity. And over time, that can quietly outpace what people expect from homeownership, especially when you factor in something most people overlook, time. Because buying a home only really works financially if you stay long enough. There are closing costs when you buy, more costs when you sell. And if you move too soon, those costs can erase years of potential gains. So if your life is still changing, if your career is evolving, if you're not sure where you want to be in 5 years, renting isn't a failure, it's flexibility. And flexibility has value, even if it doesn't show up on a balance sheet. Here's the shift that changes everything. Owning a home is not automatically a wealth-building strategy. It's a lifestyle choice that can become a financial asset under the right conditions, but it can also become a financial constraint under the wrong ones. Because a home locks you into a specific place, a specific payment, and a specific timeline. And for some people, that stability is exactly what they want. But for others, it limits their ability to adapt, to take opportunities, to move when life changes. And that's where renting starts to look different. Not as something temporary or wasteful, but as a tool, a way to buy time, reduce risk, and stay adaptable while you build your financial foundation in other ways. Because wealth isn't just about what you own, it's about how much control you have over your decisions. And sometimes, the person with fewer obligations actually has more freedom. So, what does this actually look like in real life? It starts with being honest about your situation, not what you think you're supposed to do, but what actually fits your life right now. If buying a home stretches your finances to the point where you're stressed every month, that's not stability, that's pressure. If it limits your ability to save, invest, or handle unexpected expenses, it might not be the advantage it seems. On the other hand, if renting allows you to live comfortably, save consistently, and keep your options open, that's not falling behind, that's positioning yourself. The key is what you do with the flexibility renting gives you. If the extra money disappears without intention, then yes, it can feel like a missed opportunity. But if it's used deliberately, to build an emergency fund, to invest over time, to reduce financial stress, then renting becomes part of a larger strategy, not a setback. And if you do decide to buy later, you're doing it from a place of strength, not pressure, not fear, not because you feel like you're running out of time, but because it actually makes sense for your life. There's a quiet kind of pressure around money decisions, especially ones that feel permanent. Buying a home is one of those decisions that people attach meaning to: success, stability, adulthood. So when you're renting, it can feel like you're on the outside of something important. But the truth is, there isn't one path that works for everyone. There's just the path that works for you right now. And sometimes, the smartest financial decision doesn't look impressive from the outside. It just feels calmer on the inside. Less stress, more room to breathe, more control over your time and your choices. And that matters more than most people realize. Because in the end, progress with money isn't about proving something. It's about building a life that feels stable, flexible, and sustainable over time. And if renting helps you do that, then maybe it's not losing. Maybe it's just playing a different game, one that quietly works in your favor.